This project considered the advantages and disadvantages of consuming locally produced fruit and vegetables as opposed to fruit and vegetables produced overseas, and utilised a wide variety of experts from the University of Wales Bangor and the University of Surrey.
In the mid-90s to late 90s, there was the idea of food miles arose, that you could use food miles as a measure of how environmentally sustainable a particular vegetable or any product you like really was based on how far it had travelled. The problem with food miles at the time was that it quickly morphed into the idea of localism. It seemed self-evident that if you grow a lettuce in Kenya, for instance, and a lettuce in the UK, that the UK lettuce is going to have a lesser impact on the environment than growing something in Kenya and then transporting it to the UK. Gareth Edwards-Jones thought about this idea and thought that it really didn't go the distance in terms of providing sufficient empirical data for consumers and industry to make a rational choice on where they should source their produce from.
It created quite a lot of concern. I think particularly where you had people like the Soil Association getting very alarmed about flying products around the world, and obviously it ties in with a lot of wastage, and it was all sort of aligned to just general concerns about the overall use of hydrocarbons within the food environment.
What you really need to do is to measure the carbon emissions involved in producing the product from the farm to the point when you consume it. So it would include tilling, ploughing, planting, packaging, storage, transportation, the consumer driving to the supermarket to buy the product, taking it back home and then cooking it. So you need to really calculate the carbon costs of that entire process.
This really is a direct spin-off of the Relu project that Gareth was involved in. The Relu project generated a lot of interest from farmers in the environmental impact of their cropping systems and the emissions from their soils. And Gareth was commissioned to produce a number of farm carbon footprints from different cropping systems.
The project considered nutritional contents, greenhouse gas emissions and resource requirements across the life cycle of selected vegetables as they progress from field to table, and the comparative data was collected from sites in the UK, Europe and Africa.
The beauty of what the research has done has actually taken us from a very simple approach of actually measuring how far it is from point A to point B to actually putting some proper metrics behind those numbers, and actually really opening up the arena to a much bigger discussion of considering all the aspects. Food is not simply about carbon. You know, there are many aspects to sustainable food, of which carbon is one.
You can evaluate the validity of a particular product based on its carbon emissions, but there are other standards that you can use to help consumers decide where's best to buy from. So if you're concerned about farm worker rights, then fair trade produce is your criteria, and you may just be concerned with the nutritional value of the vegetables that you're buying. So we carried out a nutritional evaluation of the vegetable produce as well, and to see how the nutrition of a product changed as it was transported and as it was stored. And then we also did focus groups to see what consumers thought about all of these issues. So there are a lot of different measures that we used at the same time, and we treated them as if they were all equivalent.
The whole development of Africa is dependent on food export. You know, livelihood, so the whole ethical side of African production is a key element to that. Now, is that more or less important than carbon?
Professor Gareth Edwards-Jones, who led this project, sadly died in August this year. One result of the project's work was a spin-out company, Footprints for Food, and Ed Morehouse explains how the research by Gareth and his team made this company possible.
Gees was directly doing some work with Gareth Edwards-Jones at Bangor, looking at carbon footprinting of different supply chains. From an initial study of 10 products, the information which Gareth and the team at Bangor produced was so powerful and informative. Basically, we looked at that as an industry, and we felt there was so much interest that actually it warranted establishing a business to offer that as a service to fellow growers.
Gareth was the driving force. He was one who was passionate about all aspects. He was able to get a large overview and foresee what sort of implications the work would have for policy and the wider sort of public debate. And he also tackled the public debate with great enthusiasm. His legacy is both regional, national and international. So regionally there are farms interested in getting their carbon footprint assessed. But work has also been carried out on an international level for the UN and the World Bank, looking at different products and the carbon footprint of those products and comparative evaluations of those products.
I think one of the problems that all consumers have is where they get information from in the food chain. And often we have people where information that seems sensible and it gets embedded in people's psyche. It's like it's dogma, and it's really hard then to shift them away from that. And what we're trying to do is to get the evidence base that will challenge people's dogma.